This video is brought to you by contributions to patreon.com/Henry Kathman from viewers like you. Thank you.
I want to tell you a story. Well, 3 stories to be specific. All of them are tales that are set in the world of stop-motion animation. A world some associate with the holiday specials of Rankin Bass, the goth aesthetics of Tim Burton, and the British charm of Aardman. But for the past few months, the stories that I'm about to tell have caused me to associate the art form with one genre: horror. To be clear, many of these stories are not frightening in any conventional manner. Rather, the sheer amount of talent, dedication, and time that is put into making each one of these stories makes the art of stop motion feel akin to an eldritch ritual that is both miraculous and existentially terrifying. Our first story is the most recently released. Harold Halibut is an adventure game released in April of 2024 after 14 years of development. The process began when the team at Slow Bros Games sought to combine the mechanics of classic point-and-click adventures with the aesthetics seen in then recently released stop-motion films like Fantastic Mr. Fox and 999.
The game has players taking the role of Harold Halibut, a hapless janitor that lives aboard the spaceship the Fedora 1. The ship had initially fled Earth at the height of the Cold War, only to spend the next 200 years aimlessly wandering the universe before crashing into an uninhabitable ocean planet. This vessel, which originally served as humanity's last chance to expand beyond our past failures, has acted as their prison for another 50 years by the time the game begins. During that time, the same oppressive systems that the Fedora claimed to be an escape from are nicely preserved through the control of the All-Water Corporation, who are more than happy to help perpetuate this imprisonment if it means maintaining their rule. In hearing the premise alone, the combination of claustrophobic corridors and the thalassophobia-inducing vastness of the surrounding ocean could make one assume that this game devolves into the horrors seen in other games like Soma or BioShock. But of all the stories that I'm about to share, Harold Halibut is perhaps one of the most earnest, joyous, and hopeful games of this sort that I have experienced in recent memory, which some view as a massive achievement in the face of Slow Bros' long development. Generally, whenever we discuss games that had long development cycles, certain patterns begin to emerge in these stories. Some games like Ico or Final Fantasy VII see their teams having to shift their development to different consoles with the release of next-generation hardware. Other titles like Metroid Dread or the yet unreleased Elder Scrolls VI find themselves delayed as the games buckle under the constraints of present-day hardware. In some infamous examples like Duke Nukem Forever and Beyond Good and Evil 2, the blame can be placed on severe mismanagement born of ill-defined direction, with both teams sharing stories of having to scrap years of work on the whims of unfocused and allegedly abusive executives.
But unlike those other examples, the 14 years spent creating Harold Halibut do not indicate any such uncertainty or lack of vision. Even when looking at the earliest versions of the game, it appears that the teams seem to have a consistent vision for their plot and characters. If anything, it's because of Slow Bros' specificity that the game has taken this long to release. Harold Halibut has been described as a handmade narrative game, a descriptor that I think vastly undersells this development process, as every single asset in this game was literally handcrafted. Every character, prop, environment, down to the most incidental piece of clutter on a shelf was created by the team carving, painting, sculpting, welding, sewing, everything in this game, only being able to use them through photogrammetry, a process that involves taking hundreds of photographs of an object in order to create a detailed 3D model that can be manipulated in the game engine.
Ironically, the team decided to go with this method because it was initially seen as a shortcut. Since no one on the team knew how to draw, they saw physically building the environment as an easier means of bringing the story to life. While some see this as a sign of hubris on the part of Slowbros, this reasoning is not unprecedented. As much as we might look upon the art form as a slow process, stop motion initially gained its prominence in the animation industry as a cheaper, faster alternative. Where traditional cell animation would require artists to individually draw 12 to 24 separate images for every second of film, stop motion could speed that process by photographing every movement of the character. One company that greatly capitalized on this shortened production pipeline was Rankin Bass, who from 1960 to 1985 were able to produce 17 television specials, 3 feature-length films, and a single 130-episode TV series using stop motion on top of the dozens of traditionally animated and live-action productions that were being helmed by the studio. While company founders Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass had a decent amount of involvement in their productions, part of this massive output came as a result of the company outsourcing most of the work to various Japanese animation houses in order to speed up production. While there is a great deal of affection directed at the studio's work, particularly their holiday-themed animated specials, you can see the product of this production pipeline on display. Characters jitter around with a lack of momentum and weight, there is little attempt to properly lip-sync, and the faces on the puppets are generally inexpressive owing to the animators being only able to manipulate the eyes, eyebrows, and lower halves of the mouths, resulting in a style that many audiences dismiss as uncanny and cheap. In contrast, Harold Halibut manages to circumvent these potential issues by animating their characters using motion capture and keyframed rigs commonplace in modern computer animated productions. The result is a game that maintains the tactile feeling evoked by stop motion without compromising on the fidelity expected in current generation video games. The level of detail on display is so meticulous that the developers have assigned a dedicated command in the controls that allow the players to zoom the camera in, just so that we can better appreciate every part of the game, knowing that somewhere in Slowbros' Cologne headquarters, there is an exact physical replica of everything that you are seeing that had been lovingly crafted by many talented artists. This can be best seen about halfway through the game. Light spoilers, I guess. All throughout the opening sections of the game, players are constrained to navigating Harold on a 2D plane, as the long corridors of the Fedora force the players to slowly move between clearly segmented sections of the ship that are separated by all water's aquatic tube system. But after finding an amphibious alien species caught in the Fedora's filtration system, Harold and his new alien companion travel back to the caves where they came from. Upon arriving, the players travel down the cave corridor using the same static side view, only for Harold to arrive at the end of the cavern to find the shifting movement of the camera, combined with the vastness of the cave's alien landscape, created a feeling that left me quite similar to Harold in this moment. It was absolutely beautiful and awe-inspiring to be sure, but it also felt a bit overwhelming. How long did it take to build this? Did they need to sculpt the caverns? What kind of materials were needed to craft it? Holy shit! There's grass? They managed to add freaking grass? There's no way they could have crafted and scanned the grass, right? Onataki Molgu, you must tell me, what is the deal with this grass? Spill your secrets, you coward! I must know everything about this grass!
Perhaps the greatest trick Harold Halibut manages to pull in its runtime is making players place so much importance on every object in the world. In a modern gaming landscape where environments are loaded with thousands of individual assets to flex the latest graphical hardware, it can be easy to forget the care and attention that is required to create these virtual worlds as players speed past the numerous art assets designed to not steal away the player's focus while maintaining a cohesive art direction. But because of its tactile nature, stop motion presents audiences with a sense of tangibility that isn't as keenly felt in other forms of animation or storytelling. Perhaps best shown in our next story. Despite being one of the oldest forms of animation, stop motion tends to be dismissed as a dying art form. Despite being spoiled for some absolutely amazing stop motion productions like Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, The House, Wendell and Wild, and the many works of Leica Animation, these productions are deemed massive risks that frequently entailed the creators having to independently fund larger elements of these projects compared to other animated films. In Leica's case, their amazing work has only been able to withstand commercial failures thanks in part to the passion on display with their president Travis Knight, not to mention large amounts of money invested into the company by his father, Nike co-founder Phil Knight. I mean, if you're gonna be a Nepo baby, this is how you do it, guys.
Much of stop motion's waning popularity is thanks in part to the emergence of CGI, as characters and environments that were previously only achievable by physically crafting them could now be digitally integrated into movies. There is a famous story from the production of Jurassic Park that is repeatedly used to signify this transition. In order to create the dinosaurs of the film, Steven Spielberg hired Phil Tippett to help animate certain shots using a variation of stop motion that used motion blur to make the movements seem more realistic. Tippett had already gained a reputation for being one of the best character animators at Industrial Light and Magic, bringing to life multiple set pieces like the AT-ATs from Star Wars, Ed 209 in RoboCop, and, a personal favorite of mine, the two-headed dragon thing from Willow. Does this creature make any sense? No. Does it appear for only a single sequence before being slain? Sure. Does it absolutely slap regardless? You bet your ass it does. There are some variations to the story surrounding Tippett's time as dinosaur supervisor for Jurassic Park, though the story goes that Tippett and his team produced some stop-motion animatics of the kitchen scene with the raptors and the T-Rex car chase, both of which Spielberg found too unrealistic despite their attempts to blur the motion. This caused Dennis Muren, the film's digital compositor, to suggest building the dinosaurs with CGI, something that Spielberg challenged him to prove. Once Spielberg and Tippett looked at the test footage of the T-Rex, Tippett turned to Spielberg in shock and declared, "I've just become extinct!"
As amusing an anecdote this is, the emergence of CGI wouldn't hinder Tippett from working as an effects artist. In fact, it is because of his experience with stop motion that Tippett and his crew were able to help the transition to CGI work so well, as his studio would go on to get credits for their CGI works in films like Hellboy, Cloverfield, and every Twilight movie, weirdly enough. But his work on Jurassic Park proved to be a pivotal moment in Tippett's life, as it caused him to abandon stop motion as an art form, including his work on a stop motion film titled Mad God.
Tippett had previously begun the project in 1990 following his work on RoboCop 2, but once he and his team concluded their work on Jurassic Park, the project was shelved for the next 20 years when staff at his studio found 6 minutes of unreleased footage, whereupon they encouraged him to launch a Kickstarter campaign in May of 2012 so that they could complete this film. And in finally watching it 9 years after that campaign, it's astonishing to see how Mad God doesn't just differ from other stop-motion works, but most feature-length films. Even after first seeing it in 2021, I still find myself struggling to put into words what exactly this film is. It's sometimes cliche to describe different horror media as nightmarish, but experiencing Mad God feels like observing another person's nightmare. It's ambiguous, it's cyclical, it stews in its emotions, and it likewise feels extremely personal. Instead of following a conventional plot, Mad God sets out to be a mood piece that gives audiences a tour of a desiccated world being explored by unnamed soldiers known as the Assassins. Armed only with a map and a suitcase containing a time bomb, the assassins descend down into this world to deliver this suitcase, and in the process, witness representations of pointless war, heartless industry, and violence presented as spectacle in an endless cycle of atrophy and creation.
Like other works of stop motion, Mad God creates a feeling of tangibility through the meticulous detail of the puppets and the physicality communicated through their movements. While this tangibility is usually used in other works of stop motion to familiarize audiences with the characters or the story, Mad God seeks to use this tangibility to alienate through this unnatural anatomy of these creatures, the deaths that are casually delivered, and the goop. My God, can we talk about the goop? Every clip that I am allowed to show on YouTube vastly undersells the amount of goop you see in this film. I swear, there is not a single frame in this film where you don't see something that is just a little bit goopy.
As a work of experimental horror, Mad God is a film that defies a single definitive reading. Instead, like a nightmare, the film asks us to bring our own experiences and backgrounds into our viewing in order to come to a conclusion. For Tippett, he has described the film as a misanthropic reflection of his perspective on the world and how it is ravaged by the endless procession of time. In seeing this film's bleak imagery, it's easy to understand the kind of mental toll such a work could have on the people creating it, to the point where Tippett reported being admitted to a psychiatric ward for 3 months following a mental breakdown a year before the film's 2021 release. But as undeniably gruesome the film's imagery is, there is also something grotesquely beautiful about it. From the creative glee in how it slays these different creatures, the masterfully crafted environments, and how the film depicts the process of decay, demonstrates how even in this realm of an uncaring mad god, life continues in some form.
When examining Mad God, I think about the process of creating art. Just as the law of conservation says that matter cannot be created or destroyed, the creation of any type of art necessitates the destruction of something else. One must break stone in order to carve a marble statue. One must stain canvas in order to make a painting. And one must twist and bend the hinges of a puppet in order to make a stop-motion film. Perhaps this may read as too optimistic, but even if Mad God is made as a demonstration of meaningless destruction, the fact that that destruction is the product of so much passion and creativity makes it hard for me to agree with Tippett's misanthropic interpretation of the film. I don't know if I can definitively say that I enjoyed Mad God, but I can say that it presents a view on the artistic process that does feel oddly comforting. If Mad God represents the beauty that can be found in even the darkest horror, our final story illustrates perhaps one of the truest horrors that can be found within the act of creation. While the creation of something sometimes necessitates the destruction of something else, there is one thing that is always destroyed in that process: time. Part of what makes stop motion such a maddeningly arduous process is how the most lifelike and skillful stop motion can only be created through the collaboration of many people, or, barring that, enough dedication from an artist to take the time necessary to complete something.
Compared to live-action films, the average full-length animated feature generally takes much longer to produce. The earliest hand-drawn animated features like Peludopoulos and Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs each took around 3 years to produce, whereas the first full-length stop-motion animated film, The Tail and the Fox, had completed its animation in 18 months by 1930. It is partially due to this shortened production timeline, combined with the region's history of traditional puppetry, that much of Eastern Europe embraced stop motion as an art form. One particularly popular method that saw much use was cutout animation, a stop motion technique that sees the filmmakers manipulating puppets that are handcrafted out of paper laminated on celluloid. Historically, the process was assisted by placing small hinges on the joints of the puppets, which helped to keep the puppets' movements consistent. Perhaps the most famous practitioner of this method is Yuri Norstein. a Russian animator who was known for working closely with his wife Francesca Yubasova in creating elaborate cutout animations, Francesca drawing the backgrounds and the character cutouts, while Yuri meticulously animates. One of Yuri's biggest qualms with cutout animation is the flatness and rigidity found in its movements. Where most other forms of animation can take advantage of certain principles like exaggeration and squash and stretch, cutout animation is hindered by the construction of the puppets. As such, Norstein would take to leaving his puppets largely unconstrained, oftentimes puppeting them without hinges, while having Francesca draw multiple copies of the puppet's hands, eyes, mouth, and any other components of the puppet so Yuri can better simulate depth and flexibility in their films. While this method would result in beautiful animations like Hedgehog in the Fog, The Heron and the Crane, and Tale of Tales, it has also resulted in both Norstein and Yarbosova taking increasingly longer times to produce each film, as each production grew more elaborate and ambitious with every release. It was after the release of Tale of Tales in 1979 that Norstein and Yarbosova began work on their most ambitious project yet, a 60-minute long adaptation of Nikolai Gogol's short story, The Overcoat. Already, this would have been an incredibly challenging production for the two to work on, as they were accustomed to only working with their friend Alexander Zhukovsky as their cinematographer. But Norstein would increasingly become more of a perfectionist in the team's work on The Overcoat, consistently trying out new methods of animation and scrapping work that felt outdated. So by 1986, the team had only managed to complete 10 minutes of the film, causing the group to be fired from Soyuzmultfilm, the Soviet Union's primary animation studio. In spite of this, Norstein and Yarbosova would continue to work on The Overcoat independently, setting up a studio space in their own house so that the two could continue their work on the film. As famous as Norstein and Yarbosova's previous films are, The Overcoat has proven to be perhaps their most famous, despite the film still being incomplete.
As of writing this in 2024, it has been 43 years and the couple are still continuing production on The Overcoat, even after the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the death of Alexander Zhukovsky in 1999. To date, it has the world record for the longest running active film production, animated or otherwise. And unlike Mad God, the longest time Norstein and Yarbosova spent away from the project was a single year following Zhukovsky's death. Throughout all that time, Norstein has said in interviews as late as 2015 that most of the couple's spare time is being spent bringing the story to life, with Norstein infamously growing hostile to any outside efforts to help them complete this film, not accepting any help from any additional animators besides his chosen team, refusing to use computers to streamline the process, and declining all offers of external funding.
Я не хочу делать то, что все вокруг меня делают. Хотят легким путем поймать счастье, не получится.
Like a number of folks online, I first became aware of The Overcoat, Norstein, and Yarbosova thanks to a video by the channel Atrocity Guide, which details much of the film's production and the toll it's taken on the couple. But I don't think the enormity of The Overcoat can be fully understood without watching the completed footage for yourself, which can only be found in low-quality uploads to YouTube or the 2021 documentary Making the Overcoat by Art Scene Films. All of these clips are quite beautiful when taken on their own, but the section that sticks out to me the most is this shot, only lasting 20 seconds, but showing the couple's talent and meticulous style. Our protagonist, a poor bureaucrat named Akaki Brashmakchin, curls up to sleep, wrapping himself in his blanket. If there was ever a shot that could be licensed to simplify, a shot of a character falling asleep could be it. But as Akaki's face sits motionless, the real feat is found under the blanket. Because Akaki's blanket is so thin, we are able to see every curl and kick of the leg, every shifting of the arm and bending of the foot covered by the changing folds of the cloth. Knowing this was achieved through dozens, if not hundreds, of small laminated pieces of paper, one can't help but wonder how much time was put into bringing the shot to life. How much of Norstein and Yarbosova's life was given so that Akaki could fall asleep. In watching these finished segments, it's easy to see why Norstein and Yarbusova remain so revered by animators all around the world. Animation legends like Osamu Tezuka, the godfather of anime, Studio Ghibli founders Isao Takahata and Hayao Miyazaki, and Wallace and Gromit creator Nick Park all cite the couple's films as inspirations for their work.
While I do think there is much to be appreciated in watching these clips, without the full context of a completed film, it's difficult to imagine the Overcoat's ultimate fate. I imagine whatever we will see will be a sight to behold, but I can't help but wonder if it could justify the amount of time put into it. If anything could justify the amount of time.
Despite Yarbusova and Norstein discussing the very real possibility of the two dying before the film is complete, the fact they still work all these years later to finish this film leaves me unsure of whether to praise them or to mourn them.
Too often, our society likes to reinforce the idea that only great art can be made by suffering. But herein lies the logical conclusion of this mindset. Two people exchanging over half of their finite time and energy on this earth for the Overcoat, as if the film has morphed into a vampiric entity that demands sacrifice so that it may be created. While there's plenty of value to be found in art created under difficult circumstances, it feels as though the people who preach this idea of suffering for the sake of art do so continually for the benefit of those who gain success and profit from this suffering.
Earlier in this video, I levied a number of criticisms against the stop-motion projects produced by Rankin Bass. And while I stand by my opinions, I don't want to dismiss the work that was done by the countless animators that worked for the company. Most of my issues with the animation found in their projects were not born out of a lack of skill or competence, but were rather the result of rushed productions that placed more emphasis on pushing out a product as quickly and as cheaply as possible, all the while undervaluing the work done by their contracted animators. In fact, the style of stop motion that Rankin coined animagic was the invention of Tadahito Mochinaga, who already was perfecting this process of stop motion animation for a decade before being discovered and hired by Rankin Bass, who proceeded to place their contracted studios under extremely intensive working conditions on very low budgets.
While it's difficult to verify every story, many accounts made by former Japanese animators speak of long work hours that lasted entire nights in order to complete the shots required for each special, only for these animators to be largely uncredited and likewise forgotten.
For many people, the art of stop motion is primarily associated with Rankin Bass, all the while the actual animators are pushed to the side. Animators including Kizo Nagashima, Sumiko Hosaka, Kyoto Kika, Ichiro Komuro, Fumiko Magari, Takeo Nakamura, Koichi Oikawa, Tadanari Okamoto, Hiroshi Tabata, and Reiko Yamagata.
These are the names that people were able to recover. But how many more continue to lie in obscurity? How many people gave away their time, creativity, and passion only to go unappreciated and unremembered?
In the title of this video, I describe stop motion as a miraculous horror. Because of all of the different forms of filmmaking, stop motion feels like the purest embodiment of the horror found in creation. It is a horror that I felt was best summarized by my friend and collaborator, Molly Noyes. As for the past 100 years, there have been many technological innovations that have made most forms of animation much more streamlined and convenient. Stop motion is the one field of animation that has been largely excluded from these shortcuts. The techniques used to create something like Fantastic Mr. Fox in 2009 are nearly identical to those used to make The Tale of the Fox in 1929. It's a process that I find intensely relatable. Painstakingly moving your creation bit by bit, unsure what the final result may be, all in the hopes that you will not despise what you have made by the time it's complete.
There are many unenjoyable parts about the process of writing, researching, and editing these videos, but for me, The worst part about creation lies in the times in between. On the days when I am not actively working on my projects, when I haven't touched a script in 3 weeks, when I look at my bulletin board of video topics and seeing the post-it notes of ideas gathering dust, when I suddenly get an idea even though there are at least 3 other projects that are still being worked on that I want to finish before the end of the year, and I can't help but wonder if this is how each of these different artists have felt. To be forced to devote yourself to a single creation for so long while the ideas fill your head like a pressure cooker ready to burst. I don't think it's possible to understand the innermost complexities of the creators of these stories through their work alone. But I believe there is value in thinking critically about the ways we do treat those who do create and interrogate how they're pressured to suffer in order to share these parts of themselves with the world. The creation of any kind of art, no matter the quality, is so miraculous because we as humans are miraculous. To be living in a chaotic universe filled with so many horrors and nevertheless spend so much time and energy so we can leave a part of ourselves for others to witness, to share some other part of yourself in spite of the fears and obstacles that we face every day, it almost feels as impossible as making a piece of clay or paper move on its own. And yet, the existence of these works exemplifies how we can achieve both forms of impossibility when we are able to support each other enough so that everyone is able to access this miracle. So here's to any practitioners of stop motion. May you be able to navigate the horrors of creation so we may remember just how miraculous we all are. Thank you for watching. Best wishes.